but good for her.
That's a great parting shot for.
I know, right? Hey, Olivia.
Trying to figure out my headphone situation. Let's see.
Okay, I do have a pen.
Ken's not going to be with us tonight as well. His musical responsibilities continue.
And he hasn't figured out a bilocation yet, right?
No, not yet.
Right.
We're working on that. I'm sure Elon Musk has, worked that out. He
Well,
just,
I'm thinking more of it in terms of Hermione Granger.
well, as soon as Elon figures out how to monetize it, I'm sure we'll all know.
Since my calendar sometimes indicates that I think I have it, um, I actually am fearful for when it's possible, and I actually must be in two or three places at the same time. And it's raining again.
Huge downpour about 5 minutes ago. Huge.
Mm.
Fascinating.
Oh, it's one of those ones that happens over or under a really quite unique. There's an overall yellowish green.
Yeah.
All the greens are especially bright right now.
Right.
I came up from Connecticut today. Connecticut has trees in full flower, leafed and flowers out, and it's gorgeous. And then you drive up uh, and it gets more and more bleak as you go into Massachusetts. And I know that it will happen, but it's amazing how different it is. Just uh, you know, I'm not quite sure how we count this, but not that very far away.
Yes.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm not sure we're going to see anybody else.
Right.
So why don't we get on with it? This is the Bolton Master Plan Steering Committee for May 2nd, 2024. Pam, if you will take the reins,
You want me to share the agenda?
please do. Sitting in front of me, but I'm sure everybody's looking at it.
Got one.
It's in an odd format, but let's see.
It's okay, that's very
Okay.
clear.
So we have to review and approve the April 11th meeting minutes. Ken sent out an edit that Stasha had just a few hours ago, so I'm not sure if people had an opportunity to take a look at those, but if you did, we would request you vote on the revised set.
Okay, I've seen it, no problem.
Move we
I'm happy
approve
to
the minutes of
clarify.
April.
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
All those in favor of approving the minutes of April 11th, 2024, please do so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at the 11th meeting.
Right. Okay, moving on to the implementation priority table. And thanks for all the effort Pam and Olivia have put in on this. And we had a lot of input, but it was challenging to pull it all together and come up with a reasonably good table and reduce the magnitude of the recommendations. So can you put that up, Pam?
Sure, just give me a second. think- Not sure if you can see it okay.
Yep.
You want me to zoom in a little?
Yeah, that would be good. That's fine. Yeah, that's great.
Good, good,
No.
okay.
Right.
Okay, so at the last meeting, we discussed everyone just giving the top 10 kind of high priority table, a once over and insert any comments. I didn't see anything additional that was added into the Google Drive, so I think we're all set. What we did was we took, because there were so many goals and objectives, we wanted to prioritize what the committee felt were the highest and most important things and the timeframes that they should be acted on. So it wasn't so overwhelming. So we took out 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, and then 5+ items that we felt were the most important, at least to start discussing, and put them in a separate table also to be included in the plan. And then in the right column, there's associated goals and objectives to those tasks as well, because a lot of them were overlapping or at least related. So we wanted to point those out.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question, Pam?
Sure.
Just right at the bottom of that first page, I think it was 6.1.1, the facilities assessment in collaboration with Town Hall and DPW employees to identify needs and areas of improvement.
Mhm.
Does that complement the municipal building conditions report of 2022, or is that in lieu of, or is that, how are those two things related or not?
I think this was in addition to that, was the impression I got from the discussion.
Okay. I guess I didn't understand, and maybe this is a question for the committee, the difference between, or what the facilities assessment would add that the municipal building conditions report of 2022 didn't already have.
I recall the discussion seemed to include general assets of the town, almost even including parks and so on. Because I too was a little curious as to what it meant, and it seemed to be greater than just buildings.
Okay, that would make so that the yes, because I've read the municipal buildings conditions report, and that was it was specific to buildings.
Yeah,
So
and
this
what
would
it
be-
didn't get into was a projection of what would be needed in the future. It touched on that, but it really was never intended to do that. And it definitely needs to be done. And I think
Got it.
611 covers it.
Thank you.
We
But-
may
but-
want to acknowledge, though, in 2 or 3 words, that this is in addition to what has already been done, because it's very important that we know what has been done and be able not to be redundant.
Right.
I'll put it in the notes. Does that sound
Thank
Yeah,
you,
that's
Pam.
fine.
okay?
Sure.
But I thought it was a very good report. It went through a couple of revisions in which I was involved. But in the end, I think it highlighted, among other things, whatever you build, you have to maintain.
You bet.
Amen.
Look at the official title and put it in there. Make sure it's
Yeah.
correct.
Municipal building conditions report, I think.
Ah, thank you.
And what you had just erased there is what we need to do.
Was there anything else anyone wanted to discuss before we finalize this?
No, I don't believe I had any.
All good.
I mean, we've gone through it to a large degree, and this is
Mhm.
a rearrangement and prioritization, so. Where does the rest of it stand? And frankly, I haven't looked at it since it was one consolidated implementation table. Have you separated out a table and not included this, or is this included and this is a summary of the high priority?
It's the table, the full table is in there, and then this would be a separate high priority table.
Okay, but the full table includes the high priority table.
Yeah, oh yes, sorry, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. They're not two separate documents.
No, they're not. We've been editing them simultaneously. We just wanted to pull out some
No,
things
that's
that
fine.
were more important, yeah.
Right.
Bob, you're not gonna like me, but can I ask another question?
Sure.
And please, you guys be honest. It's something that struck me, and I just for the sake of, you know, I don't know what you would call it, professionalism, or it confused me a little bit, and so I think it's worth me at least mentioning. And Bob and Pam, tell me where to put it if neither of you agree with me on this. I noticed that on the 5+ year time period, right? All of the things that we have under that section of the matrix are low to medium in their ranking, if you will. And so when I saw when I clicked to open the document, I was like, this makes perfect sense. It's all the H's, right? And then I got to the 5 year plus, and rightfully so, they're low priority or they're medium priority, which is why they're 5 years out. They're not, but it contradicted itself a little bit. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that in the listing, and maybe it makes perfect sense to folks like, okay, these are, because they're over a longer period of time, they're not as high priority, they're low and medium. But it just struck me that for the punch of what a high priority matrix should be,
Yeah.
do we really want to have that last 5+ call that section in there? I
No,
don't
that's a
know.
good point. I mean, I
Mhm.
think the 5+, some of those may be very important and, characterized as high priority, except they're not going to be able to be implemented in a short period of time. So, and it sounds like a contradiction in terms, but we may have things that are high priority, but are going to take a long time. Is that what you're getting at, Stasha?
Yeah, and maybe it's fine just the way it is. I just wanted to. It didn't sit right with me, but it also is not like I'm not trying to make any more work for anybody. I just wanted to point it out, make sure other people were comfortable with it.
Would
No,
it
I think
make, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I was going to say, would it simply make sense to say that this is, that this section is high priority, but which will require more time? I mean, so we have high priority things that you could pretty much, you could do in a couple years if you put your mind to it. And then we have some other things that are important, but that we will have to commit to over a longer period of time.
No,
It's,
and I think that's what we're getting at here.
yeah,
That somehow or other, we've got to differentiate high priority and
Yeah,
time
appreciate
frame.
Mm.
And what I think we've done is understandably taken high priority and near-term time frame and provided that table.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I don't know,
Which
any
is like,
suggestions?
bam, like this is our stuff, right? 3 to 5 years, this is what we want done, which made a
Right.
lot of sense.
Can't we just label it? I mean, high priority, short time frame. High priority, do it fast. High priority, it's going to take longer.
Well,
But you
she
might have to
did a
make the
nice job with
decision.
that. It is
Pardon?
in there as like 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 5+
Hmm.
years. But you go through this like boom, 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 and then you get to
Yeah.
this section that's kind of like, well, You know, and at least the housing ones that are in there are not, you know, the highest of priorities. If you're, you know, you pull, these things have been specifically pulled out. So I don't want to speak for others or other sections, but that struck, like, the things that are in the first two sections of this high priority matrix that are housing related are like big ones. And yes, they belong there. The other section, and again, it's just for the sake of if we're handing this to the selectmen, I want them to be like, I want it to be very clear and punchy, you know? But that's just me, and I'm only one member on this committee, so I don't want to, I'm going to stop talking.
Can I interject and summarize what I think I heard? So so it sounds like the very last section where we go into 5+ years, because none of the original categorizations of priority were the H, they were all like M or L.
Yeah,
Doesn't really make sense to have them there. I think I agree with you, Stasha. I think we should almost just nix that final
Yeah.
section and just keep the first two.
okay,
Are you saying
yep.
take out the categorization, or take out the items?
No,
The
no, no.
the 5+ years, right?
And the items will still be part of the master plan, but they just won't be in this part that we're calling the high priority summary, because they're not, they really aren't.
We'll remove the whole
so they're
section.
they're lower priority. They might go into a second section,
Right.
and then right, comma.
Exactly.
But after we've done that,
Okay.
But Rebecca's going to be sad if we take out let's stop worrying about floodplains.
Well, it's still going to be in the plan. It's just not going to be in the high priority.
Until the first big flood, and then it will move up. But there we go. Says somebody who lives very high on a hilltop.
Well, I hate to interject at this point, but I frankly am confused about the difference in priority and time frame. I think there are things out there that are pretty high priority, i.e. important, but it's not going to happen in 1 to 2 years. And I think we're confusing time frame with priority. I'm not sure how to separate that.
They but none of in the table we didn't classify any of the 5+ goals as high priority.
Yeah, you're right. We didn't.
And I'm reading through them. Again, I had my eye on the housing ones, but there's like 10 of them. And if you read through them, I'm not sure, like there's a sewage one in there. Collaborate with commercial developers to establish sewage treatment solutions for buildings, which I would say is, you know, that's definitely something important to do. But is it a high priority, like out of the gate, something we need to have the selectmen with their, or whomever, you know, whoever is getting this matrix, you know, is it that important for the intention of this document, which I think is to, you know, really focus people who aren't necessarily looking at the entire matrix right off the bat on, like, these are the high priority items. Bob, I can't speak to sewer. That's yours. So you can tell me where to put it.
No, and I understand, you know, to me, a lot has to happen before we even get into that discussion in terms of research, et cetera. But, and I don't know, I can't find it very quickly, but could we talk about community center?
Right.
So a community center is clearly a very long process, but my view at this point is if we don't get at it and make it a reasonably high priority item, it's never going to happen. And I'm sorry, I've been beating this dead horse for 25 years.
Right.
So I'm a little biased.
But I don't think that one's in here. Community, I don't see it in,
No,
what I do see it,
It is
It is, it's under,
community gathering space,
Yeah,
exactly.
right there, 61.
can you say it again?
621.
621.
It's organize a committee. That
Yeah,
is one of
that
those,
stays.
that's practically a
Absolutely
killer, but
stays.
right there, but
That is in the high, that has an H next to it. So it's not these ones up here. I'm talking about it, Pam, can you scroll down a little bit on this? I'm talking about the ones way at the bottom. Whoop, go
Yeah.
back up.
Starting there, starting
Yep.
there.
Yes, starting right here, 2.1.6 and down.
Yep.
Those are the
Ah.
only ones that I'm talking about because they're all
Okay.
lower medium and they're all 5+ years. Sorry, I probably wasn't specific about that. I
No, you were.
apologize.
Yep.
Because I agree with you, Bob, on the community center.
Pam, you're scrolling up into the
Yeah. I'm
non-high
going-
priority.
Now we're up in the highs again, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not, I think all of those should stay.
The 3 to 5 year, it's the 5+ year.
I
That is,
think we
Right,
gave
they-
those 5+ years that time frame because they were kind of lower priority. So
Or
I
something
think we
else
should
that
take
was
it
a
out.
priority
Yeah.
Yeah.
Needed to happen
Yeah.
before these happened.
I
So
agree.
it just seemed like those last 10 were
Mhm.
superfluous.
And that's all of them. That we didn't pluck anything out of that time frame. It's all encompassing of the full table for the 5+ year time frame. So I don't think it's important to include in this
Okay,
table.
Agreed.
so I just got lost here. So I'm looking at 621 about the community gathering space. Are we leaving this into the 3 to 5 year time period high priority?
Yes.
yeah,
It is. Okay. All right.
yeah, but keep in mind, the way that scope is defined, it's the whole ball of wax. And to oversee implementation, oh, wow. Pull
Right.
that off in 3 to 5 years.
But and it's gonna stay in there because it's a high priority. So
Yeah, you're
it,
right.
like that it
It does.
stays. It's the ones
Yeah.
below it that didn't seem again, it's not that they're not important. They absolutely should be in the master plan and in the implementation matrix of the master plan, but they're not perfect for this document because they're not the high priority, very, very, very important ones.
No, Sasha, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I agree.
Okay.
No, I agree emphatically.
Okay.
No, what I'm saying is that with 621, it is high priority. And in order to pull that scope off in 3 to 5 years, that's an awe-inspiring effort. Leave it at
Good
that.
Good
Yes.
point.
Been there,
Unless you-
done that.
Unless you get some of those geezers together who say, if you think that, borrowing a housing dining room or gathering space for a couple hours every week is enough to take care of the 20+% of the population that is considered elders, we don't believe you.
That's correct. We don't.
Yeah.
Right. So are we resolved then to remove the latter
Yes.
half section? Was it
I believe
page
so.
3 going into 4?
Yeah, it's
Correct.
just-
Okay.
So we're all copacetic with the priority table at this point. Okay,
As discussed.
This sections 1 through 4, and I think what we probably want to focus on was the developable, potentially developable, and undevelopable categories.
Yeah, we worked with our GIS team to kind of rethink about the way we want to frame those maps. And I have a couple slides that
Oh,
may be
you want-
helpful to walk through.
Let me give you control there.
Okay.
Olivia, hold on.
Just because I think it's helpful to visualize the methodology that we used, and see if that makes sense with everyone. And just to summarize.
Pam, were you able to read and upload the file that I sent you?
The climate change file?
No, the 1 through 4.
Oh, it was in the Google Drive. I was able to upload it, yeah.
Okay.
It should still be in there.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna summarize the conversation that we had at the last meeting about the developable land map. And it seemed like, some folks felt like the map didn't necessarily represent all of the land that could be developable. And I think the language that we used in the legend made the map seem like we were mostly looking at land that was undevelopable. So we kind of reframed the way that we were thinking about it. And we can walk through that now.
Olivia, can you just step back for a minute? I think one of
Yeah.
the comments I had on that section was,
Sure.
do we
Yeah.
have a clear criteria for what constitutes undevelopable? Is this a
Yes.
zoning and development regulation mentality, or does this incorporate wetland slopes, all the other things?
Sure. Let me just share my screen. So these are just some definitions of some of the criteria that we were looking at. A lot of this is protected land, land of high ecological value, and different categories that the state determines. So these definitions are here. I'm happy to send these to you guys just so you have a firm understanding of, each category and why we're using it and what it means. But some of them can get kind of into the weeds, but thinking about, what land could potentially be developable. Last time we spoke, somebody raised the point that, yes, wetlands and biomap areas and NHESP areas are high ecological value and natural resource value areas, but that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come in and develop on that land. There's some, review that goes into looking at development specifically on wetlands and that type of thing. But for land that could potentially be developed, we used these categories to help identify them. So
I'm sorry, I just got lost there. It sounds as if you're saying there are undevelopable lands, but we're going to classify them differently and say we can develop them. Could you clarify?
Yeah, so this is land that could be developed, but it does have a high conservation or natural resource value as identified by the state. So I'll move to the next slide and maybe this will help fill
But
in
just,
the gaps.
can you just go back to that for 1 second?
Yeah.
Maybe 3 seconds. I can understand a number of these, but when you get to wetlands, you really can't develop them, or are you talking about getting conservation agreement that yes, indeed, under these circumstances, you could develop them, which leaves you with an awful lot of land in this town.
Yeah, well, the last map that we had categorized wetlands as undevelopable. And it seemed like the reaction we had at the last steering committee meeting was that just because there are wetlands does not mean that they are undevelopable. So
Okay, that answers the question. That's fine.
that's why we included it this time. And I also think it's helpful to see in terms of a conservation perspective where this land is.
I'm confused here because I thought that categorizing land as wetlands put them permanently, as long as nothing changes in that categorization, puts them into an undevelopable category. And you're saying now maybe we can start to build on wetlands?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I'm-
you've always been able to build, you've also always been able to infringe on wetlands with an appropriate order of conditions and justification.
Ah, okay,
And so-
infringing on, but not building on.
No, I mean, but again,
Yeah, yeah.
if we're talking about development, that's an element.
Mhm.
You know, so if somebody's only available access to their land, which is a legal lot, goes across wetlands and they want to build a
Ah.
bridge with a driveway, hey,
Ah,
you know. Go ahead,
okay.
I'm
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
you can
All
even
right,
see,
all right.
I think a good example is down here. It's pretty small, but all of that light blue shading, those are wetlands, and you can kind of see how all of these little subdivisions have been built into the landscape. So although those wetlands do exist, it doesn't necessarily prohibit where development could occur. But I think it's important to indicate where they are.
Okay, so the legend, I think, is very accurate in what it states. Could be developed, but has, et cetera.
Mhm.
And then
I like how you did that. Yeah.
I know it's a really tricky exercise to have to go through, especially
Yeah.
because this isn't really a binary thing to say yes or no about, certain properties.
Right. Because you've got things like the state's laws on wetlands and then our local bylaws on wetlands. And, so it's hairy. It really is.
Yeah.
But at least this gives you a good visual for some of the high level, just land qualities.
Yeah. So the blue is kind of a combination of all of these criteria, and this is further layered in the final map, which I think will hopefully make more sense at the end. So here we identified land that is unlikely to be developed. And this is due to public ownership or because of additional significant natural or cultural resources that are, protected open space or limited protected open space, like cemeteries and school grounds, so that type of thing. So we pulled all of that into one layer. So again, land that is unlikely to be developed. And there is some overlap between the two layers, but I think land that is unlikely to be developed because of certain protections kind of overrides any potential land that we identify as developable, which we layer at the end. So this orange layer will appear on top of the blue, kind of indicating what land would likely not be developed.
Where does 61A and B fall into this whole discussion?
So that is, let's see, I've got my list.
Was it back on the previous map?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we decided to include it under has development potential because technically it's not an in perpetuity thing and it can come out of chapter. So I
Okay,
think
no, that's fine.
indicating that is helpful. Okay. Are we good to keep going? It gets a little crazier.
No, and again, to some degree, you're speculating on how much this can resist increased land values and demand for development and all the rest of it, but I think it's a good shot.
Yeah. The next kind of criteria we looked at makes it a little more complicated. And so this goes on a more parcel by parcel basis. Everything that is gray and not outlined is land that has been built between 1700 to 2022. So basically anything with a building on it or a house on it. And the white area is land that has not been built on. And we looked at, looking at the town zoning and the requirement of 10 acres or more for potential residential development, we kind of identified parcels just based on size, and potential for them to be developed. So anything greater than 10 acres is outlined in black. Anything outlined in red is according to assessor's data. So the town assessor identifies parcels as either undevelopable vacant land or developable vacant land. So the green is developable, whereas the red is undevelopable. And I know Pam, we kind of went back and forth on this, and it seems like the criteria for that can be a little arbitrary sometimes. I don't know how that's necessarily determined, but we felt like it was important to include, just since it is assessor's data and could maybe indicate either vacant or accessory land that may be developable.
Okay, so Olivia, the maximum development in town based on this criteria would be the potential new lots greater than 10 acres, which would be subdivisions plus the stuff in green.
Green does not follow the 10 acre
No.
criteria.
It could be individual lots.
Right. And so I think, yes, there's some smaller lots that we see that are
Okay,
maybe a
so-
part of a subdivision.
Potential development is black bounded and green, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
So kind of grouping all of this together, it looks a little crazy, but I think after you look at it for a while, you know, going by it's more of a parcel by parcel basis.
Mhm.
So if there's a piece of property that, you know, off the top of your head, and this came up last time, we had not really called out I think this is the Boy Scouts property around here.
Yeah.
We hadn't called that out as developable, and someone mentioned that, well, technically it could be developed. So, we kind of called that out this time based on the criteria of 10 acres or more. And I think
And
it's
there's nothing
helpful.
restraining it, right?
Right, nothing.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to look at, you know, the chapter criteria, which is that dark blue outline. So most of the land that has development potential is outlined in that blue, and is identified as chapter land. So, I mean, a good chunk of land that we're saying could be developed is protected in that sense. But then again, moving a little further than that, we're calling out those black bounded parcels and the green parcels, which also could be developed in the future. I will say I noticed that the school is identified here, so I think that was a mistake on our end, so we'll have to fix that. But I think it just got pulled into the loop of parcels greater than 10 acres, but
Right.
I think it's as binary as it could get. If you're trying to think about it on a parcel by parcel basis, it's a little more insightful, I think, than the prior map we had, but I know it's very confusing.
Okay.
I think it makes
No,
a
I
lot
mean,
of
you have
sense,
to-
actually.
I
Yeah.
think this is much better. I think you did
I
a
do
great
too.
job with this, and I think this is better for master planning purposes. And as we examine things moving forward, this is much more helpful. So I appreciate the work you put into this.
Yeah, and I can email out this slide if you guys want to dig into this a little bit more. And I can send you the PDF version so you can zoom in and see everything a little bit more clearly, but
That would
That
be
would be
helpful.
awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
But
Awesome.
I don't think there's any way, frankly, that you can represent this in a way that it just pops out and developable versus developed versus
Right.
undevelopable, all is very neatly there. You have to spend time and you have to look at the legend carefully. And it's all there.
Mhm.
But I can't imagine any way that you could simplify this without getting into all sorts of nuances and contradictions, which you've tried to get rid of.
Yeah, you did a good job with things like unlikely to be developed.
Right,
You-
yeah.
Yeah, I
Unlikely
think
has
changing the
potential.
language, changing the language from last time helped. I think we used potentially undevelopable and undevelopable, but this has a little bit more potential by saying has development potential instead of just calling things out as undevelopable.
Black and white, yeah. It gives respect to the fact that it is an imperfect science, if you will, but it helps because we are trying to plan for the future within the context of all those changes and nuances. So it's useful in that way.
Yeah.
And as long as you provide the criteria for this legend, I think
Yeah,
it's,
definitely.
the
Yeah,
other
we
part of
will
it is
include-
presentation. When the master plan comes out, and this would be impractical in hard copy, but I would hope that you would be able to include as part of the files online PDFs that could be blown up so you could actually look at this in more detail.
Yeah, we have the map files as PDFs, which are pretty
Okay.
massive files, but
Yeah, no, I
we can
understand.
send those to you.
But
Yeah, certainly.
very valuable to be able to build, to be able to blow up and look at more carefully.
Yeah. Um,
How are we regarding the IGC golf course?
over here?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly we have a recreational only zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Are we believing that that could be changed?
That's true. For the purposes of this exercise, we didn't really dive into the specific potential based on zoning. I think that would be a great next step, just to see how much land fits into which category of the zoning. But yeah, for now it's
that's pretty unique. That piece of land in terms of zoning.
Right.
I don't believe we have anything else in town that has that zoning definition or limitation.
Bob, the condos across from the candy store, at one time, I think we had played with the developer, tried to be nice, and I think we might have said it could be recreational as like a driving range or something, but you're right. I think that the IGC sort of spot zoning that passed the AG, it is fairly unique among all the other parcels in town.
So it might be simpler in presenting this is to put that single proviso in, that is one unique parcel that has limitations in its zoning definition.
I mean, we regard it as protected, at least for now.
Well, you watch out.
I know.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments?
So,
No, this
Bob,
is great.
Would you apply a new color to the IGC?
yeah, we could
You could do
call it
that.
out, and just identify it as the golf course too.
Stripe it or something?
Could do,
Yeah.
yeah, like a crosshatch.
All right.
Because you don't have much, that's it. It's the only one that is like that.
Right.
Yeah, and then if you guys have any other comments after you take another look at it, feel free to reach out.
So Pam, Olivia, you're going to post this as a PDF, right?
Yeah, I should be able to put it in the Google Drive, right? Is that what? Or
Yeah, I think you can add a PDF. Yeah.
yeah, you can. Yep.
You can. I do it.
It opens a little oddly, but if not, I'll put it on the website.
Okay, Olivia, it's yours. More on 1 through 4.
Yes. Do you want me to I know we have notes from the last time we kind of reviewed those sections. So we've been making changes on our end to reflect those. So I don't know if you want to go over those again or just go over.
Well, no, I mean the highlights.
Let me open it up.
I gave you all my sharing privileges, Olivia. You're the host now. By accident.
Start from the
Excuse
top.
me, cat bites at the side door.
So we can do a quick run through. So starting at the top, we kind of reviewed this stuff last time, but I know we've got some folks who weren't there last time. So we just kind of go over, trying to keep it as concise as possible, but giving people some context in case they don't read the existing conditions, giving them a little insight, some of the major themes. I think we added the planning a resilient future part just to tie in the climate aspect. Made some revisions here. Timeline. Updated. Stasha, I saw your comments about the timeline. So I was able to update the graphic and make sure all of these dates coincide with.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we did add the sewer expansion report that was done. I think Stasha as well pointed out the housing units from 2020 was off, so we updated that. I think we were using the 5-year estimate instead of the 2020 numbers, so we changed that. Getting into some of the graphics, it was recommended that we turned some of the projections into one visual. That way we can see how they differ.
Yeah, I thought that was, yeah. I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, a little more clear.
Well, it sounded a little bit like, hey, we're laying it out, you guys choose.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like this stuff didn't change too much. Survey. As far as the build out section, we wanted to go over the new map with you guys today. And so we'll update that. Just wanted to make sure that it made sense and everyone was okay with the updated methodology. So this section will get updated. We do lay out the criteria for the new map. So that'll be updated and detailed. We'll have to redo some of the graphics so that they make sense with the two categories that we have. So we'll update those. And then Pam, I saw your note about the zoning map. And we had updated it. I forgot to add the new map into the document, so that's there now.
Okay.
Oh, and that's great because you have your IGC, former IGC, land is differentiated.
Right, right.
And
Good.
this is the old developable map. So we'll swap that out. And then the goals. And we spent a good amount of time on housing at the last meeting. Let's see. Pam, I saw your comments about adding in some more info about the subsidized housing in Bolton, so we added the table in.
Oh,
I wanted to ask about the new development. I wasn't sure if it was all rental
It
Um,
is, yeah.
and how,
It's 229 units in perpetuity.
oh, for affordable?
Yeah, because it's
Oh.
rental, so you get credit for every unit, whether they're market or not, or affordable.
Okay, great. So we added that in. I changed the photo. I know the red buildings were a little bright last time, so I think this is a nicer concept. And then Stasha, I got the photo you sent of the cluster housing in Bolton, so I think that's a good example just to give folks a sense of what that looks like. And we added in some photos of what missing middle housing is, similar to the cluster housing, just so readers can visualize what that will look like.
How does Goose Pond differ from these? I mean, is Goose Pond considered clustered housing?
No, it's a cluster.
It's
It's a, oh,
The
So
fact
it's
that
it's
close
the
together.
big houses.
pardon?
The size of the houses is the real distinction, I think, there.
Oh,
Like,
really?
You've got 1 acre lots, I think, right? You said it was a phosphorus,
Yeah,
and then you've got big houses on 1 acre lots.
Isn't the
Whereas
Toth
these are
Farm like
small.
that too on Sugar Road?
Sorry, Ed.
Toth Farm, as I call it, the curve of Sugar Road.
That's the
Golden
one I
Pond?
sent the picture of. I sent a Craftsman, like an aerial of Craftsman Village, so you could see where the greens
Yeah.
are in relation to the houses, and so that folks have an idea of what it can look like when you say a triplex, or
Right.
you know that isn't a box with 3 floors kind of thing.
Is that generally a favorable development in town? Like,
yeah, you don't want Chelsea 3-deckers.
yeah.
Well, and the cottage overlay was defeated at, I think it was 2018 meeting, so town meeting. So I think there's a need to kind of educate on the benefits of them, and what they can look like as compared to the Chelsea version.
We're going to have a seminar and workshop on that in June.
Nice.
Awesome. Do you have a date for that yet, Bob?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, 12th.
12th now? Okay.
So one thing, I was talking with one of our senior planners who was kind of reviewing some of this information, and he ran by me that in the housing production plan, there is a recommendation to look at smart growth zoning, and how that could potentially be thought about in relation to like the sewer district area, and where the sewer study was done. Here we just kind of propose the action that the planning board should consider implementing smart growth, but it's not saying that the town should implement it, but it is just a recommendation based on the housing production plan. So I don't know if this goal was something you wanted to include or not.
I'd be careful about that in that particular area under
Because I know
the
we've talked about it before, and I couldn't remember if.
sewage treatment plant.
I don't think the goal recommends an area.
No, I don't think so.
It's general, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were just thinking that.
Yeah, be
in-
careful about that area because, it's pretty concentrated already, and that's the reason,
Mhm.
that's one of the major reasons that the discussion is ongoing about having consolidated sewage treatment.
Mhm.
Yes, my take on that one was that mostly the 40R and the 40S is geared towards more populated areas, and areas that have town sewer and town water, and areas that are transportation hubs, or we're not even an MBTA community. So,
Mhm.
but I think it's worth keeping it in there because it's a resource to us as a town that the state, you know, if we decided we wanted to pursue it, or you know, it's something that we want to make sure is on people's radar as a resource.
Yeah. I think
But it doesn't really fit into Bolton right now, to be fair.
Well, it doesn't, yeah, it may
Right.
fit into Bolton,
Right,
but it's not area specific. That's fine.
right.
Right. Yeah, we
Right.
didn't want to make this specific goal area specific, but looking at that as a recommendation in prior plans, we felt like it was maybe a big one to include, so we wanted to run it by you guys.
Well, and keep in mind that one of the takeaways by some people of the sewage treatment study is, wow, we have a sewage treatment plant. We could build more in that area. And that was not the intention of that study.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, this will all get sent out again as a,
No, and I think, no, I don't think we need to discuss it further. I think it's fine as written.
okay.
Mhm, I agree.
We've been kind of thinking about the economic development section a little bit more. Some feedback from the committee last time. I interpreted it as you guys wanted to see a little bit more about potential areas that, not areas that could be developed, but maybe specific recommendations for future economic development. So me and Jeff, one of our other planners, were kind of thinking about this. And where is it? We're looking at some of Bolton's industrial parcels because it's a limited area. And Pam brought up the vacancy to include. So two of the like accessory industrial zone parcels are currently vacant. So we wanted to point those out and include those here. And then we just list out some of the additional uses that exist in that area.
Yeah, I don't know how to incorporate this, but having talked to Eric and a number of other people about this, one way or another, we've, I think, got to come up with a mechanism to determine why those vacancies are the way they are and start addressing them, and work with the economic community to do so. It's a huge issue when you look at the vacancy in Bolton and this type of property.
Yeah, they're especially, yeah, it's a big piece of property. And I think there are some, if I am remembering correctly, some limitations on the land, maybe wetlands and some other things that might play a
Yeah.
role.
In terms of the buildings, in terms of the land, yes, but in terms of the building footprint, there's a huge amount of available space that perhaps with zoning changes could be used much more effectively.
Mhm.
But it would take a creative land planner to figure that out.
And then, so we wanted to point out some of the areas surrounding 495 and 117. And this was something that one of our planners pointed out to me. At 500 Main Street, there's a large chunk of land that is listed for sale. And it's kind of an assemblage of these few parcels here. And I think this is the Boy Scouts property, and then the other larger parcels down here. So I guess I just, wasn't sure if this is kind of getting too into the weeds for this section, but we felt it was important to call out, especially the focused area that the committee looked into. We felt that those two areas might be important to mention.
Yeah, and just to give you a heads up, there are preliminary proposals, certainly for the 500 Main Street.
Okay.
Can I just throw out something else too, and take it for what it's worth? the issue of growth can be highly contentious in town. So the idea would be, I think, to, focus on fact and making sure that it's, we're presenting, this could be developed this way. Yep, that's a fact. It definitely could. Or this land has these values to the town and to the economic, development of the town. And those are, as long as they're true statements, but to then, not to embellish them too much, because I think there's a fairly large population in town that also sees this as concerning.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to my comment about the primary focus should be on doing more with what we have as opposed to building more.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that came through in the survey in leaps and bounds. So I think I'm echoing something that a lot of Bolton folks anyway had mentioned in that survey in terms of, and so I want you to have the kind of the nuanced feelings, if you will, of a majority of folks that took that survey, at least.
Gotcha.
But, and rather than jumping into the potential opportunities of specific areas, we haven't even really thoughtfully gotten the various elements, both in government and in the town together, to do our focused area evaluation to figure out what to do with this stuff and whether the zoning makes sense and who owns it and what you could do. So it seems to me it would be appropriate to step back a little bit and say, we need to study these areas in view of not just zoning, but the implications to transportation, housing, all sorts of other things, as well as ownership, as well as environmental limitations, and develop a group within, probably led by the planning board and Pam, to start doing that kind of evaluation. So it seems to me, in terms of priorities, the highest priority is to reduce or increase the utilization of existing facilities and perhaps change some footprints, use, and possibly zoning, and then take a look at areas that have the potential for development and take a look at the best way to handle that in a broad sense of what's good for the town, what's good for the environment, what's good for transportation, or what is the least impact on transportation, I should say. And go from there, which was really the intent that we had in developing all the information that would go into a focused area evaluation.
Yeah, and I think the kind of exercise steps that you guys put together, I don't know if that's something you would want to include as an appendix to the master plan, but I think it's
I would.
a helpful
Ryan?
resource to. Am I frozen? I think I froze.
No, you didn't freeze.
We hear
Okay.
you. We
Says
hear
my
you.
internet is unstable. No, I was just saying that the steps that you identified in your focused area assessment to complete that exercise may be helpful to have as an appendix, but
Yeah,
I don't know if that was something you wanted to.
Yeah,
include.
I think it would be a good idea. And
yeah.
it's not just this area. I mean, it's the two areas south of the intersection of 117 and 495, but there's also lots of discussion about what is the best use of the Forbush Mill Main Street area as well. Who owns it, what horse trading could be done between the town and developers, how could that whole thing be handled to make the best use of it? And look at all the parameters and implications, both from economic development, transportation, and convenience of amenities to townspeople. So the simple answer is yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we were just kind of thinking through that. Still working on it and putting our ideas together, but
Yeah, be very careful about making specific land use recommendations in the master's plan.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there were some comments last time that some of these farms may not be active anymore. So I didn't get any specific notes sent to me, but if you know off the top of your head and want to shoot me an email letting me know, we can update that map as well.
Okay, well,
think-
Ken Troop
yeah.
has sent out an email as a result of a conversation he had with Ken Nishway of Nishway Farms. And Ken Nishway had some thoughts and was going to think further. I mean, it was only right off the top of his head that he made the comments he did. So I
Mhm.
think we need to explore that a little bit further.
Okay. Yeah, I think we used this we pulled the farms from, I think, Discover Bolton. They had a list of farms and farm stands and agricultural businesses, so we had sourced that information from there.
And he pointed out that there are farms that, like Lord's, that do business in Stowe, but own and cultivate a huge amount of land in Bolton. So
Mm.
those kinds of things ought to be considered as well. So I think we need to wait for Ken to get back on that.
Mhm.
Internet. Sorry, my internet is freezing. Okay. So that's the first few chapters. Did you guys get the next few that I had sent to Pam?
Yeah, but I certainly haven't gone through them
Okay.
with kind of.
Same. I got them, but I haven't really
Yeah.
gotten a good look.
Mhm.
And we should set an action there so that everybody looks at those and as we did with 1 through 4, get back, and we don't have much time left, folks. So get back quickly.
Yeah, that would be great if you could send comments. We're working on wrapping up the municipal facilities, transportation and climate section. So those will be grouped together. We did lump in water and sewer into municipal facilities and services just because we felt it made sense there. It could have a place as its own chapter, but we didn't feel that it was lengthy enough to warrant its own section, but we do kind of go over that pretty detailed, so.
Could
Do
I,
you-
could I make a request, which is, if we decide on like a due date for when people need to have comments to you, maybe Pam, you could just email the whole committee after this meeting and just say, hey, here's a link to where those chapters are. Let's get Olivia our comments by such and such date.
Let's do that right now. That's what we
Yeah.
did at the last meeting, and I think it worked out well. May 9th? Another week,
Yeah, that works for me.
and then I'll send out a reminder. Olivia, you haven't changed anything in 5 through 7 yet, right? It's what you sent out on Monday?
Yeah, I haven't changed
Okay,
anything from those. Let's see, I'm just seeing if I had any questions for you guys.
Having not looked at it, I guess maybe I'm presumptuous in asking, but the whole issue of availability of water has been used in a number of hearings in town about should we develop and is this a prudent way of going and reasons not to. Is that dealt with in terms of the availability, the aquifers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think we kind of touch on aquifers in the natural resources section. It's certainly on the map, but yeah, in the water and sewer section, we mostly talk about the existing reliance on, like well systems. But I think we could add a little bit more about more of the natural resources if you're looking for that.
I mean,
We've had wells go dry in
not very
bad
many
summers.
though.
Yeah, but
Most of our wells go dry because people are watering lawns.
And- yeah.
And that's true. I mean, what the
Yeah.
sewer rats, excuse me, the water and sewer task group,
Yeah.
spent a fair amount of time looking into that. But we did write quite a lengthy report on both water and sewer that's up on the Google Drive, I would assume at this point. I haven't looked at it in a while.
I have seen that, and I pulled a bunch of information. It was super helpful. So,
Yeah.
that's in there. And then we do just kind of a brief overview, of the, I don't know if this is something you would want included, but we do include an overview of the potential sewer expansion area, but that was from the 2022 report.
In the case of something like 580 Main, is there anything like a groundwater study where somebody says, oh yes, there's going to be plenty of water for everybody for, the projected 580 residents that we're going to have? Does that ever get done? Or do we just pray that there's water there?
Now, I mean, if you go for a public water supply, you have to be able to justify it,
So that was done, as far as
Yeah.
we know.
as far as I know, and that's handled by E DEP.
And for something like a development, like just throwing Goose Pond out of the air, did anybody ever say, oh, there's no problem, these 13 houses will have plenty of water?
No,
Never gets studied, does it? The assumption is it's going to be there. And is that just Bolton, or is that just praying to the angels?
no.
I've been asking that question for years. Never found an answer.
It-
Develop all you want, the water will be there because of the angels. Honest to God.
And the studies that were done in the 1970s were all based on acre and a half zoning.
Mhm.
And they all said, boy, that's great. It all works.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was the only town in Eastern Mass for which it actually did work.
Yeah.
But the answer is no, very
Right.
simply.
Right.
And that will be an issue unquestionably as we get into, cottage overlays and more concentrated zoning, housing rather. How exactly do you handle water in that? And there are good answers to it. It just has to be handled appropriately because the total area of a subdivision, even though we have more concentrated housing in some portion of it, a more extreme version, I'm sure extreme's the word, of a phosphid, the area of water availability per person remains relatively constant. It's just more concentrated in one area. So yes, the answer is no, nobody looks at that right now.
Right.
The answer is if we get into that business of more concentrated housing, we're going to have to look into that both from a water and a sewer position. And ultimately, and that's one of our recommendations, we need to look at land banking or access to high yield aquifers, of which there's really only one super aquifer and a
Right.
couple of other smaller aquifers ultimately for town public water supply.
Yeah.
Which incidentally, and I don't know if you picked that up, Olivia, in the report that we put together, that the DEP is a very enthusiastic advocate of that we have public water supply and we have public sewers. Their perspective is if you have those, you have control. Where people don't regularly test their wells, PFAS is a big issue. And we have no control over what people throw into their septic systems. So if we have both of those in, an integrated municipal approach, that we solve those problems. The cost is prohibitive, but eventually we may have to deal with it.
there's also the issue, for example, we're up here on a ridge top. We have no access to the town aquifers, which have come from some distance. So we have groundwater. We have wells that go down deeply enough to get to groundwater. But we're not in what would be considered, I think, what would be considered an aquifer.
No, you're not.
So it's a whole different, so the whole development behind my house is in the same spot.
But, and I don't want to draw this out, but again, part of the research that we went through with exactly that kind of situation is that the availability of water is there for normal usage. If you
Mhm.
start setting up an acre of lawn and irrigate it, particularly aerial irrigation, then wells run dry. And the reason that people are digging deeper wells is not to go further to get to groundwater. It's to form a reservoir of water to water their lawn twice a day. So instead of having a tank, they have what amounts to a tank that's 400 feet deep and 8 inches in diameter. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But we spent a lot of time on that, and we have a lot of data.
Is it of any use? I mean, how about that? That's a strange question, but what can we, of what use are those data in terms of development decisions?
Well, again, it depends on what the development is. If there are limitations put on the use of water in a subdivision, then we probably have everything we need. If we continue to do business the way we're currently doing it, and not necessarily in Bolton, but again, the amount of lawn in Massachusetts is staggering. And to a very large degree, it's fertilized. There's all sorts of biocide, and we use an awful lot of water to keep it nice and green.
Yeah.
So it's not so much supply as it is demand.
Mm.
End of lecture. Sorry.
No.
Ask those bylaws. Right?
Yeah, and it's very tricky, Ed.
I know.
It goes back to the old tragedy of the commons and the commonweal.
Absolutely correct.
So.
Rights and no responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So now that we've devolved into
Indeed.
philosophy,
Yes.
Okay, so where are we?
I think
So
we're,
I guess
yeah.
let's,
Other
we
business.
agreed on the 9th, and you're gonna put out an email, Pam, with links to the documents, and everybody's gonna, at this point, make their comments on the Google Drive so that we are consolidated in our response.
Right.
Hey, Bob,
Right.
I just had one item to put on our radar for other business, and it's not anything we need to decide at all tonight, but it strikes me that with a new town administrator coming on board, this committee might want to think about setting up like dedicated time with that person to go over what we think are some of the key points, like almost like what we want our new town administrator to know about the master plan. I think that's after it's finalized and yada, 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 but I just wanted to say it so that we could like make note and not lose track of trying to do that at some point in the coming months.
No, that's a very good point.
I
And the
wouldn't
new
wait too long.
administrator's coming on the beginning of July.
July 1st, yeah.
Yeah.
I would not wait too long.
So let's set up a time, and it's going to be drinking from a fire hose for the first week or so, but
Yes, indeed. Tough time of year too.
yeah.
Prime
And with a new
vacation.
select person.
Yep. Yep.
With that tight election going on.
So is that it?
We're trying to fill select
Pretty
board
much.
with with smart attorneys. Right.
Indeed.
We should pick a
Okay, let's
next
talk about
meeting
the next
date.
meeting.
Next
Pam, you
meeting.
got a calendar of what days don't work? In terms of,
Do I?
well, Brian, you
Sorry.
should definitely be at the next one.
How soon are we when do we want to roughly try to do this?
If we're gonna get this stuff in on the 9th, we basically need to give Olivia and her team time to make the appropriate revisions, and then I think we need to have a meeting and finish this thing off. So Olivia, what do you think your timing will be?
Let's see, if you send comments on the 9th, should be able to, I mean, depending on the number of comments, but should be able to make those changes in time for, I know you guys like to meet on Thursdays, but is the 23rd too late, too soon?
The 23rd? Yeah, that works for me. Oddly enough, I'll be in town that week.
Olivia, when do you think you'll have the drafts of the remaining chapters available?
Hopefully next week.
Okay, so
But yeah, trying to keep everything.
so I think the plan would be to go over any changes you make for 5 through 7, and then have everyone also review and comment on the remaining chapters that you're going to distribute. We're just running tight on time, so I want to make sure we can
Okay.
fit all the chapters in.
Yeah, I think we can fit all that into
Okay.
one meeting.
Okay. Fit it in when? We're gonna have everything of the remaining 1 through 4 comments in by the
No,
9th.
1 through 4 is already done. We got all our comments into that with the
Okay, I'm
exception
sorry, I
of,
meant 5 through 7.
yeah, yep. 5 through 7, the remaining comments have to be in by May 9th. Olivia's gonna distribute the draft comments, hopefully by that, I'm sorry, the draft chapters remaining, hopefully by that date. And then we'll set another deadline, probably May 16th, to review and comment on those remaining chapters. And we'll get together the 23rd to highlight any necessary changes and go over the comments.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Sounds good.
Reiterate the 16th, please.
We're gonna set it, depending on when Olivia gets the remaining draft chapters out, we're gonna set a deadline, hopefully by the 16th, to review and comment on the remaining chapters.
Comments. Okay, thank you.
And then meet to wrap the whole thing up on the 23rd. Sound good?
Okay,
Yep, that works.
Sounds
Excellent.
good.
Thank you all.
And then we do need letters of, we do need to do a present, I guess we can do it after we wrap up, but we do need to prepare and give a presentation to the planning board. That would be the next step.
Yep.
We also need to decide if, I think we were not particularly in favor of bringing this to town meeting.
We didn't the last time, did we?
no,
No.
Nope.
And then we'll do a presentation to the select board as well.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'd leave it at that. I mean, having been through a lot of town meetings, bringing a master plan to the town meeting and expect it to, the discussion to be less than 3 or 4 days.
well said.
But to be clear, it will go in front of our elected officials and they will vote on it.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
Something about representative government, right?
Olivia, I think you did a
Ideally.
lot of great improvements since the last meeting. Thank you for all your
Yeah,
work on
really.
that.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you so much. Wonderful work.
Glad you're good with it. I'll send out that presentation and PDF of the map that I shared today.
Great.
I did have a question, the PDF link you sent for the chapters 5 through 7. I clicked on it, but it seemed to just download the PDF. It didn't create like an online PDF where all our comments would be kept simultaneously, right?
Sometimes when I share that link, it'll open in the user's browser, and then I get notifications when you comment. I think that's how
Okay.
I saw Stasha's comments. But if it just downloads it, then I won't see them.
Okay.
I can try to send out like a browser link. That might work, but
It's in the Google Drive and I sent a link to everyone to access it that way. I think it should work. It's both in the PDF and Word format.
So how do we want to comment? Read the PDF to understand how all the graphics fit together,
Yeah,
and put comments into the Word document. Okay, that
that's
sounds,
the way it's set up. Yeah.
yep, okay, good. Yeah, that was my problem last time, and I eventually gave up on making comments on the graphics because they were probably all right in the PDF.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you. This has gone really well. Thank you, Pam. Thank you,
Thanks,
Olivia.
Pam and Olivia.
Thank you, everyone,
guys.
for
Nice to see you
your
guys
effort
tonight.
and valuable time and comments. It's great.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye-bye.